years ago.
The serial killer, Peter Tobin, is convicted of another murder. 18-year-old Dinah McNichol went missing in Essex in 1991.
After all these years, we at last know the truth and justice has prevailed.
He will never get out of prison. He will stay there until he dies.
We know at least 3 young women died in the most horrific circumstances at the hands of Peter Tobin. With speculation rife over how many more girls he's murdered, police need your help to establish whether Tobin is in fact one of the most prolific serial killers this country has ever seen.
Yes, he will rot in jail. I very much doubt he'll ever get out of jail. But you can't deny that sense of closure to any other victims' families. They need to know what happened to their child.
People are still waiting to hear from how their loved ones died, how their family have died. How many more?
How many more? That's the very question that Operation Anagram team are tasked with trying to find out. Their job is to piece together a timeline of Tobin's life and then compare his whereabouts to missing persons or indeed unsolved murders. With me now is Detective Superintendent David Swindle. David, nice to see you again. You were here in January. We were talking about this timeline and how important it was. How did your appeal go then?
Yes, Crimewatch has produced fantastic responses from the public, and we have traced numerous people. The key people that we appealed for in the last one, and that is helping us to piece together, and a lot of new information as well, which is helping us to profile what he has done. OK, plenty to talk to you about. I'm going to chat to you again in just a minute. But as a direct response to Crimewatch and its coverage of Peter Tobin and his crimes, I should tell you that a very brave woman has come forward. She was attacked by Peter Tobin more than 40 years ago. This is the first time that she's spoken publicly about those events.
And just a typical Friday night. Me and a friend went to the Barland. About 9 o'clock when we got there. You know, you get into the powder room to see if you look all right, and then we went up to the dance bit. I was sitting on table and chairs then. They come over and asked me would I like to dance. They told me that, well, his name is Jim McLaughlin, and he was aged 21. He was a gentleman. Nice dress, he had a lovely suit on, shirt and tie. And he wore a waistcoat. He wore a waistcoat too. And he was very, very polite to me, nice. And laughing and joking, just an everyday guy. And then it was time to go home. We made arrangements to meet the next night at the square. And I met him, I would be around about 8 o'clock. And then we went to the public house, the Driftwood. And one thing I always remember him saying to me, I'm a bit of a drifter myself. There was this couple who obviously he knew. And I sat down beside the lady. We sat there for a while, and then we got up and left and went to a pub across the road. And I don't remember leaving that pub. I'm sure he put something in my drink. I was all over the place. And the next thing I remember is I woke up in this tenement building, a stair landing, and I was fighting for my life. He was lying on top of me, and he's pulling at my clothes, and he's punching into my face, and he's pulling my hair and pulling it out in chunks. And I'm screaming, I'm actually screaming for my life. And my screams must have been heard that loud that this couple came out of their door and he's run. And if it wasn't for the couple, I wouldn't be sitting here telling you this. It's affected my confidence, and really, I think I didn't think very much of myself for a lot of years after it, you know. And I was always quite a bubbly, happy-go-lucky person till that happened to me. And I had to live with that all my life. Nightmares, and I still get flashbacks. Still get them. Terrible. It was last year, early on in the year. It was a small magazine. It was about Peter Tobin's life and I was glancing through it, and it took you to photos when he was a very young man, and that's when I noticed that was the same man that did that to me. My legs just gave way for me. To think all these years I didn't know who it was, you know. Well, I knew the face. All I needed was that face. I didn't know that old man. To think that this man has killed all these women, I couldn't believe it. I don't know how many times I went to phone the police, and then I wouldn't know what to say, and they're going to believe me. And then it was on the Crimewatch, it came up, and I texted Crimewatch. It's never too late for anyone, never. Doesn't matter how long you can go back. It was 42 years for me. And if you think you know anything that's happened to you or someone you know it's Peter Tobin, please come forward. He's just a devil, the man. He's an animal.
She's a very brave woman. I'm joined once again now by Detective Superintendent David Swindle and by criminal behavioural psychologist Laura Richards. Welcome to you both. David, to you first of all, absolutely chilling to hear about that violent attack. She's lucky to be alive, this woman.
It's a terrible attack, and apart from the closure for herself, the determination of her to come forward and actually help us with the investigation about piecing together a serial killer's life.
Given that it happened so very long ago, why is it so important that she comes forward? Because some people might think it's not entirely relevant.
Yeah, it's 42 years ago, but despite the fact police inquiries at that time failed to trace the persons, this is very relevant because this is a vital part of his life. It shows him committing crimes as early as 1968, serious sexual crimes.
He was a very young man then. Let's talk a little bit, David, about specifics. Let's talk about the couple that she said that she encountered. What do we know about them and what are you keen to find out?
Yes, the second night that she met him, it was in the Driftwood pub, which is now called the Ivy in Argyll Street in Glasgow.
Right.
It was a couple that he seemed to know that were in the pub at that time. These people, apart from being a witness to what happened thereafter, they are people that maybe know Peter Tobin or something that can help us with, and I'd like them to come forward.
The photo of the very young Tobin, it was when she saw that suddenly it all came back to her. It wasn't the name. Why was it the photo that was so important?
The photo was a picture, it was an early photograph of Peter Tobin, and that in her mind is what she remembered from the attack then. It wasn't as Peter Tobin, it was a different name. It was Jim McLaughlin. And that is the real thing about Peter Tobin. He uses various names.
Okay, so the pictures are really important for people to check out.
More than the names.
We've got them on our website. Can you just take me back then to that couple in the pub? I would like a bit more detail. Just give me a detailed description of what she could tell you about.
It was a couple, woman was about age 20, 21. She had jet black hair. It was in a sort of beehive type hairstyle and tied back in a ponytail, and a young man in a light coloured suit. These people, they may not remember the incident, but taking them back to the pub that was in there.
In order that you can build up an idea of possibly how many crimes this man has committed, you've been doing this timeline. We've spoken about it before. Is there a particular period in that timeline that you're interested in, that there is still a part where the sort of information drops out?
Yes, with a good picture of his life, but 1978 is a year we don't know where Peter Tobin was. Despite media appeals, that is an important year in his life. We don't know where he was.
Okay.
Everything's important about him, but 78 in particular.
Okay. Laura, if I could come to you. A gentleman, polite, and everyday guy. None of these words you would associate with a serial killer. All of them have been used about Peter Tobin in his various guises. That's interesting.
It is, but that's what we know about lots of serial killers. It's part of the trait of being psychopathic, that you can blend in quite easily.
Right.
Within society, you can have relationships with people, get married, but normally they're violent or abusive relationships, which we know was the case with Tobin. The big thing about him is he could con people into trusting him, and that's what he did very quickly. He used his skills to communicate with people, make them trust him, and then you would see a very different side to Peter Tobin when he got them alone.
And when he spoke to people at these various encounters, He gave them little tasters of the truth, didn't he? It wasn't all one big lie. There were little things about himself that he fed to people that did tie in with the life he was really living. Is that important?
It is, and you see that again, you know, bearing in mind how long he's been offending for, there will be some truths within a lot of misinformation. So he used a lot of aliases,
Right.
and we heard, you know, called himself Jim McLaughlin back then. He used a lot of different details about himself that he gave away, but there were also some real things in there, like I'm a drifter by nature, which is exactly what he was.
Now, this woman unfortunately came into contact with Tobin 42 years ago. That's the earliest known attack. Why is that significant?
Well, I think it's significant because he would have been offending for many, many years, and that wasn't his first attack. He was pretty accomplished in what he did in conning her straight away to be able to
Right.
get a second date. And then as soon as he was alone with her, this Jekyll and Hyde nature, he was incredibly violent. He would have completed that attack had it not been for the fact she fought for her life, and she really fought back, and the couple coming on the scene, which made the offence be interrupted. And serial killers don't just start out with murder, so it's important. We want people to think about other attacks that may have happened. You know, if it were you, come forward. It may not have been a completed attack, but it's just as important, particularly for the anagram team, trying to piece together every detail of his life, because it could take them down a completely new and different route about Peter Tobin.
Laura, it's so interesting to talk to you. Dave, as ever, thanks very much for coming in this evening. Please, I would urge you, if you've got any information, no matter how minor it might seem to you, it could just help put together the jigsaw of Peter Tobin's life. I would urge you to call us right now, 0500 600 600, and also if you've been a victim of crime, there's always the victim support line. Their number is 0845 30 30 900. Now though, here's Rav with some of the most wanted faces that Crimewatch has got its eye on this month.
And as well as my usual 8 wanted faces tonight, we need your help to find this man. Raoul Thomas Moat is suspected gunman in a series of shootings in Northumbria, which has left a man dead and a woman and a police officer in hospital. One of the victims is Moat's former girlfriend. The 37-year-old used to be a doorman and is from the Fenham area of Newcastle and would stand out in a crowd as he's 6'3" and spends a lot of time working out. But he's extremely dangerous, so if you see him, keep well away and just call 999 immediately. Now, my number 1 here is Michael Johnson, also known as Michael Economo. He's wanted for possessing and selling guns in Merseyside. Johnson has links to Cyprus, has a large pet Old English Bulldog and used to drive a white Citroen Berlingo van, registration PA04FOK. Prior to him going AWOL, he was the owner of a bodybuilding supplement shop in Greenock Street, Liverpool. If you see him or his van, pick up the phone. You might spot him at the gym also, as he too likes to work out. And at 2, over here, is James McCowan May. Now, he's charged with assault but failed to turn up at court and has been on the run for 7 years. He has family in Kent and used to work as a car salesman. Next is John Bannister. Now, he looks a bit shocked to be here, but he shouldn't be, as he's wanted for his involvement in a £100,000 blackmail. Bannister gets around and has connections with West Scotland, Preston and Clearwater in Florida. And number 4 at the end here is Harvinder Singh, and he's wanted for repeatedly sexually assaulting a girl under the age of 12. Singh was last seen in Southall, West London in October and could well still be in that area. He's originally from Pakistan and speaks very little English. So, do you know where Singh or any of the others are hiding out tonight? If so, pick up the phone now, 0500 600 600, or you can text 63399, type crime, space, and then your message. Remember, it's important to leave that space or your message won't get through. And you also check these mugshots out online, bbc.co.uk/crimewatch. And remember, all of our wanted faces stay on the website until they're caught.
Back in May, 22-year-old Daniel Omari Smith was shot and killed as he left a takeaway shop in West London. His parents and 2 sisters are understandably devastated. And so far, detectives can find no motive for the murder. They think it's a case of mistaken identity. Do you know who did it?
Police have released a picture of the 22-year-old electrician killed in an apparently motiveless shooting as he left a takeaway shop in West London.
Best brother. He's a best friend. It's the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. Come to terms with losing my son, who did nobody any wrong.
At 14 minutes past midnight on Saturday the 22nd of May, Daniel Amari Smith was shot dead outside this Kentucky Fried Chicken in Harrow Road, London West 9. We believe this is likely to be gang-related and was a case of mistaken identity.
He was a gentleman. He was kind. He was quiet, but he was cheeky as well. Daniel was going off to meet one of his colleagues for a drink on a Friday evening. I said to him, go off and enjoy yourself and drive safely. That was actually the last time I saw my son alive.
This was the car that Daniel was driving. He parked it here before he crossed the road to the KFC. Did you see him arrive, or did you see anyone in the area acting suspiciously?
CCTV shows Daniel arriving at the restaurant and ordering food. He's on the phone to his sister at the time and is clearly not alarmed or wary of anyone around him.
Daniel left the restaurant, but 40 seconds later, he is seen on CCTV staggering back in. In images that are too graphic to show, Daniel died here on the floor.
It was my worst nightmare. The thought of knowing that my son was actually lying there without any of his family close to him. I visualized him lying on the floor. I just wanted to hold him and cuddle him like I always did if anything was wrong.
Daniel was shot here on the Harrow Road, just as he was about to get back into his vehicle. The bullet passed through his left and right lungs, and he was fatally wounded.
The gunman was brazen in his attack and didn't stop to check if he was hitting his intended target. He opened fire recklessly and shot dead an innocent man.
We believe that the gunman may have had accomplices. Witnesses report seeing 3 men fleeing the scene, turning right from Harrow Road into Marylands Road.
Take a look at these men. They were seen on Marylands Road, paying close attention to the KFC shortly before the incident. This man is looking towards Daniel's car, just seconds before he was shot. Do you recognise any of these men? We need to speak to them urgently. They may hold vital information.
We know that there was witnesses to this incident. Were you one of the people that were in the restaurant or passing at the time? If so, we need you to come forward. You may have information which is key to the inquiry.
This is my story. My life has changed in a way that I would never have been able to imagine. It feels as if my family has stood on 4 pillars, and 1 pillar has been moved. I'm so angry that someone murdered my brother. He's taken from us for nothing. And now we don't have a brother. My mum doesn't have a son.
It's heartbreaking. DI Mark Brooks from Trident Met Police joins me now, heading up the gun crime unit Trident does. This family, not surprisingly, are completely devastated by what's happened to their brother, their son.
Yes, the entire family are devastated, none more so than Daniel's parents and 2 sisters. Everyone that knew Daniel, I've been stunned by this. He really was a well-liked, hard-working, ambitious young man that was never been in trouble with the police before, and we strongly believe this is mistaken identity.
Yeah, mistaken identity. There we go. A decent young man. You think that they just got the wrong person when it came to the gangs?
That's right, and the very fact that they shot dead somebody that wasn't involved in crime or gangs just demonstrates the recklessness of these people.
That's for sure. We saw some important stills in your report there. Let's take a look at them again. These people are of great interest to you. Just take us through, first of all, a shot of a single man. Tell us what we're seeing.
Yes, this is a black male wearing predominantly dark clothing, and he's wearing a white beanie or bandana hat, and although not clear on this, he actually is wearing a chain with a pendant which stops about the top of the breastbone.
Okay, let's take a look at the 2 guys together then.
These 2 men were seen in Marylands Road, which is the direction we believe the offenders ran. and one of the males is wearing what we believe to be a red T-shirt, and the other one in a dark jacket and a dark baseball cap, and we believe some facial stubble.
OK, they were on Marylands Road, and these blokes, we think, have information that will be vital to solving this crime. Let's talk about the KFC. This young man was not shot inside the KFC, but there were witnesses there who could prove crucial to you.
Yes, CCTV shows that there were witnesses in and around the KFC at the time. In particular, there was two individuals that we'd like to hear from. One was a black female who was very short, who was wearing predominantly dark clothing and a distinctive baseball cap with a letter P on the front. And there was a white male with brown hair and glasses who had a blue and white striped shirt and had like a canvas satchel with a strap that ran across the front of the body.
OK, so do those descriptions fit you? It was the 21st of May going into the early morning of the 22nd that we're looking at there.
That's right, just about 15:15 midnight.
There is also a reward. It's a big reward. Tell us about that.
Yes, there's a reward being offered by the Metropolitan Police for £20,000 for information which leads to the conviction of the offenders.
And you can guarantee that you will take care of people in terms of their anonymity if they get in touch, very briefly.
Yes, we appreciate that people are frightened, but there are measures that we can take, witness protection and anonymity at court.
OK, for now, thanks very much for that. Right, you know what to do then. This is an innocent man who was just gunned down in the street. His life has been taken. His family, as we saw, are suffering. Help us to stop it happening again. If you've got any information, I would urge you to call this number tonight. 0500 600 600, or it's fine if you want to call the independent charity, Crime Stoppers. You can do that anonymously. 0800 555 111 is that number. Now it's over to Rav with some more criminals caught on camera.
Right, here we go. Watch closely, and if you recognise anyone, get dialing. Check out the poser at this bank in Highfields, Leicestershire in April. He's posing as a customer, but in actual fact, he's a thief. He watches a security guard deliver money to the bank before lunging forward, snatching the cash out of the guard's hand and knocking him over before doing a runner. I think the sunglasses were meant to be a cunning disguise. He shouldn't have banked on that. Name him. We're in Surbiton, Surrey last November, and this family are heading out for the day. What they don't know is that they're being watched by this dodgy duo. As soon as the car's out of sight, one of them is back to case the joint. He has a good look around outside, but doesn't spot this camera. Bad luck. Instead, he throws stones at the windows to check there's no one home, giving us the chance to have a good look at his ugly mug. When he's sure the coast is clear, he calls his mate, and they go in and pilfer the place. And that's not all. They also kicked the family dog in the head. Sickening. They attacked an innocent animal for fun, and they don't look so tough now. Who are they? It's nearly last orders at this pub in East Grinstead, Sussex, back in November. Whose round is it? Better not ask this lot. They've taken a disliking to a man standing nearby. His crime was to walk past them earlier. I know, shocking. Things appear to have simmered down. Then one of them pounces, smashing his glass into the victim's face. It's mindless, unprovoked violence and has left the victim scarred for life. Know him, name him, and police would like to speak to his mates as well, as they may hold crucial information. If you know any of them, let us know. Call us right now on 0500 600 600, or you can text us on 63399. Type crime, space, and then your message. And if you need a second look, go online, bbc.co.uk/Crimewatch.
In just a moment, the minicab driver beaten and left to die next to his car. His wife and family need to know why anyone would want to murder him.
And we'll be showing you how detectives caught up with the prolific conman Paul Bint and finally put him behind bars.
After a car was stolen on Christmas Eve, it wasn't seen again till the end of January, when it turned up, burnt out, after being used in a bank robbery in Bradford. The gang got away with tens of thousands of pounds. Take a look. Maybe you can help detectives track them down.
110, can you please attend an emergency at Yorkshire Bank on Leeds Road, Leicester Dyke? It's an ongoing robbery. I've got suspects making off in a vehicle.
On the 29th of January, 4 men broke into a Yorkshire bank in Bradford and stole more than £100,000 worth of cash. But what ended in a bank robbery started in Oldham on Christmas Eve. The Toyota Avensis was driven off in the direction of Oldham. Where did it go after that? Where was it stored?
It was a normal day.
Did you cash that in, yeah?
We all went about our daily duties.
120.
Just a steady stream of customers coming in through the door. The security guard man came at approximately 9:20. We had 5 bags delivered that day, and everything went normal until the guard brought the last bag in.
Good morning there, how can I help you?
Deposit that, please.
Yeah, how much is here?
80.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
See you, mate.
A masked man came in, brandishing a lump hammer. I honestly thought when they pushed me to the ground that the hammer was going to come on the back of my head.
On the truck. Get down on the floor now. Right, get down on the floor.
He slapped my colleague and then he punched him in the head. And then he was made to get down on the floor like the rest of us.
Come on, down on the ground, down on the floor, down on the floor. Don't look up. Where's the bags? Where's all the cash? I'm gonna say, come on, move it! Move now, come on, open up! Get in there! Right, on the ground now. Look down on the ground. Don't look up. Come on, let's go. Come on. Just stay on the ground, yeah, don't look up. Okay, everybody stay down on the floor. No one look up and no one's gonna get out, do you understand?
We were all shaking. We were all really, really terrified.
The robbers were wearing balaclavas, carrying a holdall full of cash. Someone must have seen them. The group ditched the Avensis. After setting fire to it, we think they escaped on foot to another vehicle that was waiting nearby. What was that car? Where did it go? From Leeds Road, did they actually go into Bradford? Did they go to Leeds, or one of the surrounding cities? Or did they in fact take the M62 back towards Manchester? Since the attack, the gang have already attempted to do this again. They have shown they are prepared to use violence, and they need to be stopped.
No one was seriously injured in the raid on our bank, but it might not be the case the next time. And I'd just like to stop anybody else going through what we had to go through.
Yeah, terrifying for those people. I'm joined now by Detective Inspector Steve Snow. We saw him there in the reconstruction. Hi, Steve.
Hello.
Clearly very well organised, this.
Yeah, very well organised, and we believe that they were probably laid in wait at the bank prior to committing the offence. We also believe that they had local knowledge in relation to where the vehicle was dumped after the offence.
Okay, I mean, we saw they were wearing balaclavas, but how much of a description can you give us?
Well, what we know is that they were wearing dark clothing, predominantly black clothing with balaclavas, and in particular they were wearing some black cargo trousers like this, combat trousers, with actually reinforced knee pads, which were quite significant.
All right.
We also know that they were white males, approximately over 6 feet tall, and carrying also a very threatening weapon, this a very hammer, similar to this, a yellow and black lump hammer. and would appeal to anybody that may have sold any of these in the Leeds or Manchester areas to come forward with
It's
information.
a horrendous thing when you think somebody was thinking about using that as a weapon.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about this grey Toyota Avensis. What are the details that we have on that?
Well, what we do know is that, as I said, it was stolen on Christmas Eve, and I believe that it's been stored somewhere during the month of January prior to being used in this offence. And again, I would appeal for anyone that may have seen the Avensis driving around the area. Also, it had a child's seat in the back.
Right.
And it also had some children's toys on the back seat, which again would have made it stand out in my opinion.
Okay, it had its original plates and then it had new plates. Tell us about those.
Yeah, the original plates was DE57HDY, and the clone plates, which was from a vehicle in West Yorkshire, was YS06ZGT.
Now you think this gang struck again?
Yes, that's right. I believe the gang struck again at a bank of in Halifax in Sorby Bridge on the 4th of February during the evening, where security staff were delivering money to the bank, but thankfully the robbers couldn't get to the staff in order to steal the money.
Okay, there is a big reward here.
There is. The banking establishment had put up a £25,000 reward, leading for information to the arrest and conviction of those responsible.
Okay, for now, Steve, thanks very much for joining us and updating us. Obviously, we need to find whoever did this. Please, if you've got any information, call us now. 0500 600 600 if you'd like to see that reconstruction. To be sure of the details, it's online, of course, bbc.co.uk/crimewatch. For now, here are Matthew and Rav with some great results in the cases you've helped us with.
Yeah, the phones were red hot last month, and we've already had a development on one of the cases we featured, the murder of 22-year-old care worker Fionn Wynne Roberts in her hometown of Porthmadog in North Wales.
Come on, Puss. Where are you? You're always doing this to me. You are. Come on. Here, Puss, Puss, Puss. Oh, what are you doing down there? Come on, girl. Oh, my God. Oh.
Fionn was a care worker in a nearby residential home and had ambitions to join the army as a nurse. She was thoughtful and caring, and her murder has devastated the local community. The night she died, she'd been out celebrating a friend's birthday in Tremadoc, about a mile from her home. The celebrations wound down, and Fionn and her friends left the Union Inn shortly after 4 a.m. After saying goodnight, she began the 20-minute walk home to Porthmadog. Reaching Cambrian Terrace, she was now just a couple of minutes from her road. But Fionn never made it home. Well, we don't yet know why Fionn was targeted, and police are still piecing together information about her journey home. But as a result of information received after last month's appeal, North Wales police have arrested and charged a local man with her murder. We'll keep you updated with any progress, but if you have any information that you think might be useful to the police, then please call.
Now, 2 years ago, we showed a reconstruction of the brutal murder of pensioner Georgina Edmonds, who was found beaten to death at her Hampshire home. Well, a 31-year-old man has been arrested for Georgina's murder, but he's now been bailed while the investigation continues. Detectives still need to talk to anyone who has information, so please do pick up the phone if you can help.
Now, when 25-year-old Melanie Hall went missing after a night out in 1996, we appealed for your help to find out what had happened to her. But it wasn't until last year that Melanie's remains were discovered in undergrowth off the M5.
There's growing concern for the safety of a woman who's been missing since the weekend.
Police investigating the case of a missing 25-year-old woman are marking the second anniversary of her disappearance by offering a reward.
10 years after their daughter disappeared, her parents made another heartfelt appeal.
Earlier this month, workmen clearing this spot by the M5 discovered a black bin bag. Inside were human bones belonging to a young woman. After 13 agonising years, Melanie Hall had been found.
A 38-year-old man has now been arrested in connection with the 25-year-old's murder and the disposal of her body. He's now also been bailed for further inquiries. We'll keep you updated.
At the beginning of the year, we appealed for information following the shockingly brutal murder of landscape gardener Alan Wood. Alan was found tortured to death in his home in Lincolnshire, and all for his bank cards.
Doctor Who and the Mysterious Blonde kick off Thursday night on BBC3, followed by Doctor Who Confidential after all your behind-the-scenes stuff. Then later, the last... Get in there! Don't kill me!
The full details of what Alan suffered are far too disturbing to document, but we know Alan was tortured, mutilated, and had his throat cut.
The terror that my son must have felt when those people were going to kill him, and he knew he was going to die.
Well, detectives are still hunting Alan's killer and have now tripled the reward to 60 grand for information, which results in the conviction of those responsible. So if you have any information, don't wait. Please get in touch now.
And a year ago, we showed you this. It's CCTV of two men breaking into a business in Barrow-in-Furness in Cumbria. Once inside, they set about stealing a number of laptops. They fled after being disturbed by the caretaker, but not before threatening him with a screwdriver. Well, some fantastic news. As a direct result of your calls, this man was identified as the main offender. He's Colin Christopher Hughes. At the time of the appeal, Hughes had done a runner from prison where he was already serving time for burglary. But it wasn't long before police caught up with him again, and he's now been sentenced to 5 years for not only this offence, but also a sexual assault, theft of a motor vehicle, and a further 2 counts of burglary. All thanks to your calls. His mate, this chap, well, he's still outstanding, so if you recognise him, then call in now.
Just over a fortnight ago, 49-year-old Ushi Okonkwo Nwesu was murdered. A family man and churchgoer, he worked as a minicab driver and was last seen when he dropped off a fare in South London. Now, I have to tell you that very bravely, his wife, Catherine, wanted to sit here tonight and tell us what sort of a man he was, but she is so devastated that in the end, I'm afraid she was unable to join us. But now we are going to talk to Detective Chief Inspector Dave Manning from the Metropolitan Police, who's leading up the investigation. Dave, I wonder if I can ask you what sort of a man he was. What do you know about him?
Uchi, as you've described, was a family man, married, lived in the area, lived in the local area where he worked in Plumstead. 2 very young children, 2 young girls, 18 months and 3 years. Well known in the community and, as you said, a churchgoer.
Yeah, a well-liked man. Tell me then what you know about the crime.
Well, on the night he was murdered, Uchi was working as a minicab driver. He'd started at 9 o'clock in the evening of the 18th, and he, at about 4:40 a.m., we know he dropped off a fare, or shortly before 4:40 a.m., he dropped off a fare in Sewell Road in Abbey Wood in South East London. He has then turned around and retraced his journey, and at 4:47 a.m. he's found by a milkman collapsed in the street behind his cab.
Now, you are able, remarkably, to be very specific about his final movements in his last few hours of work. Tell us why that is and explain why it's important.
That's right. As a licensed minicab driver, he had some electronic equipment in his car, including a GPS satellite system. So we're able to plot very accurately his movements at any one given time. So we know that at 4:40 he was in Sewell Road, and he'd informed his controller that he was all clear and ready for another fare. And at 4:47 we know, of course, the telephone call was made to 999 to call for an ambulance by the milkman.
Okay, do you have any idea what the motive might have been for the murder of this man?
We don't know. We're keeping an open mind. It's possibly a robbery or an attempted robbery that's gone wrong. It doesn't appear there's anything stolen from the vehicle. He still had cash in the vehicle, an iPhone, a mobile telephone, things that may well have been a target for a robbery. It may well be that the kind of man that he was, if he saw something happening in the street, if there was someone needed assistance, then he got out of his vehicle to assist and was then turned upon by person or persons in that vicinity. So we just don't know.
Now, as I said, Catherine, Ushi's wife, is understandably entirely devastated by the loss of her husband, and her two little girls have lost their father too. It's very important to them to find justice here.
Oh, of course, of course. And, you know, clearly the people or the person or persons responsible for this are extremely violent, you know, what we consider an unprovoked attack, no motive for it at all, and she sadly died of traumatic head injuries.
Who is it you're appealing to tonight, then? Who do you want to reach out to?
Well, I'd like to appeal to two sections, really. One, we know from witnesses that there are other people at the scene around the time of the murder who have not come forward. So I appeal for those people to come forward, contact us. Please phone us, even if you don't think you've seen anything that's of any use at all. Please contact us and just give us your details so we know who those people are. And secondly, I'd like to appeal for whoever may be harbouring this person. The suspect for this, the area then is a very localised community. The likelihood is that whoever is responsible for it lives nearby, and they may be being shielded by somebody under some misguided sense of loyalty.
In terms of witnesses, then, can you just remind me again of the approximate time and the date?
Right, well, it was the date of the 19th of June at sort of 4:40, between 4:40 a.m. and 4:47 a.m.
Okay.
And it may well be that people remember that because the previous night England had played Algeria on the Friday evening. So if people are struggling to remember what actual date that was it was the Saturday morning after the football match.
Okay, Dave, thanks very much for taking the time to talk to us. A really violent attack. You need to find whoever did this. Please, if you have got any information, I would urge you to call now, 0500 600 600 for Catherine and for her two little girls. Rav's here now with our second lot of wanted faces.
Right, my number 5 is Jerry Mason. He's a violent sex offender who needs finding fast after failing to tell police of his whereabouts. 46-year-old Mason speaks with a soft West Country accent and uses the nickname Boris. He shouldn't be too hard to find as he's covered in tattoos, including the names Boris and Jane and anti-Semitism written across his wrist. Now, he's dangerous, so if you see him, do steer clear and just call police immediately. Next over here is Owen Thomas, or Michael Simmons, as he's also known. He's wanted by a whopping 7 police forces for defrauding people out of tens of thousands of pounds. Now, Thomas pretended to sell tractor units, but they never arrived, and he just pocketed the cash instead. He's a slippery customer and often uses false identities. He also has links to Dublin and is known to spend time in Newport, South Wales and London. 7 over here is Terence Kerwin, and he's wanted for supplying Class A drugs in the Kensington area of Liverpool. He was spotted in April last year, but hasn't been seen since. And last, but by no means least, is this fella, Matthew Dillon. He's on the run after escaping from prison last August, where he was serving 10 years for a series of armed robberies. He has links to the Swillington area of Leeds and the West Midlands, and has a distinctive scar over his left eyebrow. So, do you see anyone that you recognise? If so, please call us 0500 600 600, or you can text 63399, type crime, space, and then your message. Really important to leave that space, remember, or your message won't get through.
They call him the King of Swindlers, or King Con. Paul Bint is a man who has spent his life taking on other people's identities, even masquerading as a doctor and senior figures in the legal system. So how did he get caught out and put away?
Gerald's Cross.
How you been, okay?
Bit busy at the moment, just working on a very high-profile case.
So you're very high up in the profession, then?
Yeah, I like to think so.
That'll be £60, please, mate.
60? OK. Looks like someone's lifted my wallet.
Have you got your chequebook at all, or a credit card?
Everything is in my wallet.
Really?
If I give you my card, my name's Kirsty Young.
Yeah.
Come to the office in the morning and pick the money up, is that OK? You can never trust a barrister, eh?
But the man in the cab wasn't the famous barrister, Keir Starmer.
And that day would mark the start of the downfall of a man who'd spent his whole life impersonating the rich and famous, fabricating audacious lies and elaborate scams. A man who became known as the King of Swindlers, Paul Bint.
He started creating a new persona 2 months earlier.
Paul Bint, posing as a barrister, has tried to trick people into going on dates with him through internet dating agencies.
First, assuming the identity of another top lawyer, Jonathan Rees, Bint used MySpace to woo 42-year-old Viv. Flattered, she agreed to a date.
When he turned up, obviously he was impeccably dressed in a suit and like a great big bunch of flowers with him. He was very charming, very polite, so very articulate.
I hear you're a barrister.
I am. 6 years now. Trained at Oxford. Work in the city.
Viv was instantly hooked.
But behind Viv's back, Bint was turning his attention to another woman, and to impress her...
He'd promoted himself from a barrister to this man, Director of Public Prosecutions, Keir Starmer. Once again, Bint had been scanning the lonely hearts. This time his target was 41-year-old Diane, a businesswoman from Gerrard's Cross in Buckinghamshire, who'd been looking for love.
He described himself as a fit barrister. He sounded very charming, very intelligent, and quite funny.
And ready for their date, posing as Keir Starmer, the head of the Crown Prosecution Service, Bint made sure he got a wig, a gown, and even gone as far as breaking into court to steal a laptop.
I decided to meet him in Windsor. We went for a walk, and he talked a lot about himself. That was the basis of the day, about his life, about his very privileged upbringing, the work he was doing on the G20 summit at the time. He seemed fairly decent type of chap.
But neither woman knew that Bint's flashy lifestyle was just a charade. The expensive cars he drove were on test drives, and promises of luxury holidays were just a ruse. He was actually penniless, and just after a roof over his head.
On his second date, he invited himself over. He wanted to stay overnight on the couch. You know, he said he was working in town the next day as well, so it's reasonable that he wouldn't want to commute all the way back to Windsor.
Paul Bint was homeless at this time, and at some stage during this period, he started to steal from them.
Diane realised that money was disappearing from her bank account, whilst Viv began noticing valuables from her house were going astray.
I discovered the bracelet was missing and some DVDs as well, so then I was actually then doing loads of internet searches and then up the picture from the Daily Mail. That was him. I thought, like, you know, what's King Kong doing with someone like me?
Viv was horrified. The man she thought was a top barrister was Paul Bint, a prolific con man who'd spent most of his life in and out of prison for masquerading as others.
Paul Bint had quite an ordinary upbringing, and during his early teens, he started to impersonate other people. And certainly by his early 20s, he was impersonating doctors with no qualifications.
In the early 80s, Bint began working at a hospital. It would be the start of years faking it as a medic.
Stealing a doctor's coat and a pager, Bint managed to pass himself off as a doctor in 10 hospitals in the northwest of England. As Dr. York, he actually tried to treat patients, stitching a man's head, arranging x-rays, even trying to change a drip in a poor woman's arm.
Finally, in 1983, it landed him in jail. But after a short stint inside, he was back at it, but this time he expanded his repertoire. One minute he was an aristocrat, gate-crashing Viscount Linley's party, the next a property magnate, and then a police officer.
We really don't know what his motivation is, or has been in the past. Clearly, sometimes it's to do with obtaining cash, credit cards, and financial reasons. But the motivation sometimes just to be the fact that he likes the con. He likes to be able to convince other people he is someone else. It just appears to us that Paul Bint didn't like being Paul Bint.
By 2007, Bint had racked up more than 150 offences and served time for impersonating an army officer, a doctor, a lawyer, a ballet dancer, and even the Earl of Arundel.
But this time it was a petty lie in the back of a cab that got Bint caught.
That'll be £60, please.
Someone's lifted my wallet.
Really?
My name's Keir Starmer.
In March last year, that same London cabbie turned up at the offices of Keir Starmer, the Director of Public Prosecutions, demanding the £60 Bint had failed to pay him. The staff there realised that someone had stolen their boss's identity and rang the police.
We did a check on the phone number that Keir Starmer had apparently given to the cab driver. We realised that number was actually registered to a well-known fraudster, Paul Bint.
Coincidentally, police had also had a call from Viv, telling them that she'd been hoodwinked by Bint.
At the same time, there were rumblings of an incident in Windsor where Keir Starmer had supposedly threatened a car clamper.
There'd been an argument with the clamper, but it was Bint posing as Keir Starmer. In his arrogance, he talked to the local newspaper, who'd put it on the front page. It was a gift for police. A quick check on the car involved led them to Diane, one of the two women Bint had been stringing along.
Bint was at a pre-arranged meeting in Reading on the 19th of May. We sent the team down there. Unfortunately, we struck lucky and he was arrested the same day.
Mr. Paul Bint?
Oh, come on.
But Bint was unrepentant.
When he was arrested and also when he was later interviewed at the police station, I would describe him as confrontational, quite aggressive and quite arrogant as well. He admitted being Keir Starmer, said there was nothing wrong in using someone else's name, denied all the allegations that were put to him.
I felt quite sick, actually. I felt this person had been in my house, took money out of my account, he drove my car, just profusely lied and made out that he was somebody he was not.
I think he's just out for what he can get. How can anyone actually have any social conscience? It's just so wrong.
But once police had visited the two women he'd duped, the game was up.
In court, he denied all the allegations, very confident in the witness box, very confrontational still.
But after a trial lasting 2 weeks, the jury found Bint guilty of fraud by false representation, burglary and theft. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison. The king of swindlers has been stopped for now.
I think he just obviously wants an easier life at the expense of other people. That's, you know, the type of person he is.
He's coming out of prison at the end of this year, and he will reoffend again. He will do it again, because that is the only way he knows how to live his life.
Paul Bint is a very convincing liar. You have to remember he spent his whole life lying. Will he change? Well, I seriously doubt he will.
The only way he knows how to live his life. Talk about a serial offender, this guy.
Yeah, when this guy's not in prison, he's conning people. He has 155 convictions so far and asked for another 350 crimes to be taken into consideration. You see, once he starts pretending to be someone, the deceptions just spiral. I'll give you one example from 2000 when he was pretending to be a lawyer involved in the Lockerbie trial. He did that to get a first-class train ticket to Scotland. Then when he's on the train, he pretends his laptop with vital information for the trial has been stolen. The train gets delayed for a couple of hours. The train company then put him up in a top hotel to try and sort it all out. When he's in the hotel, he then starts a relationship with a former Miss Edinburgh. I mean, and so it goes on. I mean, he's quite convincing and charming. The scams, though, get exposed pretty quickly because they're not very sophisticated. By then, he's on to the next one.
Yeah, it's interesting you say they're not very sophisticated, because there's a real Walter Mitty quality here. He is an absolute fantasist.
Yeah, classic fantasist stuff, saying he was friends with Robbie Williams, he owned a car that was in a Bond film, he was married to a famous actress. But some of the deceptions were incredibly, incredibly serious. I mean, during that whole phase, whilst he's pretending to be a doctor, I mean, you saw it there in the film, he was actually treating people. He was writing prescriptions, ordering blood tests. In one terrible incident, he told the parents of a teenager who'd been involved in a serious road accident that she'd be okay. Within 6 hours, she died. Oh. I mean, devastating. And then one of the things we don't know is that after doing that con for a decade, he then switches to pretending to be a lawyer. So you saw the Keir Starmer stuff, Lockerbie. Recently, he conned a woman out of thousands by pretending to be a lawyer representing Madeleine McCann's family. So, I mean, staggering.
And when it came to court then, Matthew, how did he explain all of this away? Did he attempt to explain it away?
Well, he said he'd been abused as a child, his father had died on Christmas Day, his mother had been married 7 times. Guess what? All of that was lies. He was now trying to con the jury. He had a perfectly normal upbringing. The prosecution said it was all about financial gain and boosting his self-esteem.
Very briefly, sentencing?
3 years, he'll be out probably by the end of the year. You heard police say they think he'll go straight back to this. They have a simple piece of advice. Take a long, hard look at that photograph. Remember the face. You could be the next victim.
Good advice. Now, here's Rav with a quick roundup of what's been happening on the phones.
And we have actually had some good calls coming in. Let's start off with the Daniel O'Murray Smith murder. This was the young man, just 22 years old, mistaken identity, the police believe, gunned down in West London just back in May. We've had 4 calls, but the police are very pleased with the response and the quality of those calls. Then very quickly, Peter Tobin. We've had a massive response, over 50 calls coming in. And importantly, potential victims and information coming in about where he might have been in those late 70s years. They're the missing years that police want to know about. So thank you very much for everyone that's called in.
And thanks to you, Rav. That's all for now. Details on all of tonight's cases are, of course, online. It's bbc.co.uk/crimewatch. You can log on right now for a live update on what's happening here on the phones. I think it has been a very busy night tonight. The lines are going to be open until midnight and then again from tomorrow morning at 7:30. Our next programme, well, that's in August, when we'll be looking in depth at the cases where your information has put the criminals away. That's in Crimewatch Solved. But don't go away, because we're going to be back, of course, at 10:35, 11:15 in Northern Ireland. We'll give you a full update on all of tonight's cases. If you can help but you haven't called yet, please do it now. It could all be down to you. Bye-bye.